Hello, world, and welcome to the show that I, your host David Woodruff, call the Woodruff Report. So, this week is sort of a dead week, and what do I mean by that, you may ask? Well, I mean that there wasn't really much sporting events of importance that really went down this week. No NFL. They get those 2 weeks off between the NFC and AFC championship and the Super Bowl. So it's kind of been an anticipatory week. We're all waiting for the Super Bowl. In the meantime, we've had NBA, but I mean, it's still pre-All-Star break, so how much can that really interest viewers? I mean, obviously basketball's fun to watch, but the games still aren't meaning a whole lot. So, with that inauspicious start, you may be asking, what in tarnation is Woodruff going to talk about today? Well, I'll tell you, because there's still plenty of interesting stuff that's going to be coming your way. So, we're going to start with a little San Francisco Giants preview. Yep, baseball is coming up and coming in fast. Pitchers and catchers report for spring training in just 10 days. It seemed just like yesterday that the Cubs won the World Series and Chicago was going wild and there were people all over Wrigley and people trust falling from on top of lampposts and all that. But the new season is starting, and with that breeds hope for all 32 teams in the MLB, at least most of them. Yes, I'm looking at you, Atlanta Braves and San Diego Padres. So besides a little Giants preview, we've got a little Warriors update, what's going on with Steph Curry and company. And I'm going to introduce another revolutionary idea. You may remember all the way back to my first podcast in which I talked about a revolutionary way to make baseball fun again, as Bryce Harper would say, by removing an outfielder. This time I'm going to introduce a whole new idea. So, this is the Woodruff Report. I'm David Woodruff, coming at you with a whole lot of content in 3, 2, 1. So let's start out by talking a little bit of basketball, and more specifically, a little bit of Warriors basketball. So, currently, the Warriors have the best record in the NBA. Big surprise there. But they're sitting pretty at the top of the Western Conference, which with an overall record of 43-7. The Spurs are behind them by a comfortable margin. Depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to a Spurs fan, they're within striking distance. If you're talking to a Warriors fan, we've got plenty of room for comfort. Anyway, the Spurs sit behind them at 38-11, so a comfortable 4-game margin. On the other hand, in the Eastern Conference, that is, the Cavs are again leading, as many thought, with the Celtics behind them and the Wizards. The East has been more of a race. Raptors, too, in there. The East has been more of a race than the West is. But anyway, the main point that I'm trying to get out here is there haven't been too many surprises this NBA season. We've seen a few things here and there. For example, the Wizards, John Wall, Bradley Beal, that backcourt has led Otto Porter too. Don't want to leave him out. They have been putting together a great season, and they are, as we speak now, going on an absolute tear. So people expected them to be good, maybe around an 8 seed in the East, which is what they've kind of been hovering around these past few seasons. But they're up there challenging with the Cavs for a top spot. The Sixers, the process is being trusted again as we speak. They are in the hunt for a playoff berth. So a few surprises here and there, but for the most part, things have gone as experts have predicted. The Warriors and the Cavs look to be on a collision course to play in their third consecutive NBA Finals. So, going back to the Warriors, there were obviously some growing pains, as many people would have expected there to be, with the arrival of Kevin Durant and the departure of so many key players from previous seasons. For example, Andrew Bogut and Harrison Barnes. But recently, the team has really started to mesh, and they've started to really blow teams out of the water. So what I mean by they're kind of getting used to playing with each other is that some players' numbers are down, especially like Steph Curry. Last year, he had an absolutely incredible year, and so critics this year have seen his numbers go down, and I don't want to be mean here, but to an uneducated viewer, you may think, oh, Steph Curry is not putting together as good a season as he did last year. But if you actually watch a game, you see that Steph Curry is really relying on his other playmakers, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, to help just as much, and he's not taking a whole ton of shots. He's really focusing on setting up his teammates. And you see that also with Klay and KD, especially recently. He's cut down on the number of shots he's taken because if you remember back to OKC, he was a main cog. He basically had the green light. He could shoot whenever he wanted. So he's getting more used to the Steve Kerr offense. Draymond Green, assists are way up. He's taking less shots, but also creating more assists. So with all that being said, I mean, Steph Curry is still averaging 25.4 points per game. Kevin Durant is averaging a little over 26. And Klay is averaging 21.3. So, I mean, still, on average, they're combining for 60-plus points. So, the three-headed Hydra monster that many people expected Klay, Steph, and KD to be is really coming. The monster is coming to life, especially recently, as I've touched on earlier. Draymond has been playing exceedingly well. And the two that I have mentioned, and the four, I should say, that I mentioned before, Klay, Dre, Steph, and KD, all made it to the All-Star game. So congratulations to them. Yeah, so not really much more to say. I really encourage you to watch a game. The Warriors played the Clippers, who some people have said that the Warriors-Clippers game is a rivalry. I beg to differ based on the Warriors winning like the past 9 contests between the two. But I watched both of those games recently, and in the first, the Warriors absolutely dismantled the Clippers by 46 points. And then again, the Warriors won comfortably last night. I'm talking to you from Friday, so I'm referring to Thursday as yesterday. So those games are just... The Warriors are just incredible to watch. Their offense is a well-oiled machine. Ball is zipping around, finding the open man. Lots of wide-open threes and uncontested dunks / layups. The Warriors have definitely led the league in assists. I saw a crazy stat the other day when I was watching the Clippers-Warriors game that the Warriors have had 29 or so... Please don't jump on my back. I could get this stat wrong. I don't have it written down. I'm just trying to remember it off the top of my head. But they've had 29 or so games of 30-plus assists, and San Antonio is second. Sorry, I'm struggling to illustrate my thoughts here. But the Warriors have 29 games of 30-plus assists. The second best team in the NBA, the Spurs, have only 9 such games of 30-plus assists. So the Warriors moving the ball. What I was trying to say with that whole big confusing stat that I just tried to lay out for you guys, I probably just confused you more, so apologies there. But what I'm trying to say is that the ball's zipping around, we're finding open men, etc., etc. So let's talk a little baseball. With spring training just around the corner, so much excitement for so many teams in the MLB. Is this going to be their year? And especially in San Francisco, that question is being asked again. The Warriors have won 3 World Series since 2010, but obviously the fan base wants more. So, what is this season going to look like for the San Francisco Giants? So let me start with just a projected lineup. This is what most of the experts, including myself, think their batting order and pitching rotation will look like. So at catcher, obviously you've got Buster Posey. At first, you've got Brandon Belt. At second, Joe Panic. Shortstop, Brandon Crawford. Third, Eduardo Nunez, who was acquired last season. Left field, Jarrett Parker. Center field, Denard Span. And in right field, the boy, Hunter Pence. And so the batting order will obviously be tinkered around with, but it looks like Denard Span will lead off with Panic in the 2-hole, maybe even the 3-hole. Buster and Hunter Pence will probably bat 3 and 4, Crawford 5, maybe even Belt. Anyway, so that'll all get rotated around, but that is what the position player slash batting order will look like, bar injuries or dismissals. I don't know. I'm speculating here. Some crazy stuff. Pitching rotation will probably look a little bit like this. Madison Bumgarner leading the rotation with Johnny Cueto, Jeff Samardzija, Matt Moore, and I believe Matt Cain as the 5th starter. So that's what the rotation will look like. New acquisitions during a busy offseason for the San Francisco Giants. The most important being the acquisition of Mark Melancon, the longtime Pittsburgh Pirate. Last year he was with the Washington Nationals, and he's now a San Francisco Giant. So welcome to San Francisco, Mark Melancon. And this is really a great pickup because if you watched any games last year, you saw that the bullpen was really the thing holding the Giants back. I mean, how many? I think it was something like 30 games blown by the bullpen. Casilla, I mean, bless his soul, he's had a good career, but he just couldn't. The Giants really didn't have a closer. So Mark Melancon will assure up the 9th inning, and hopefully the bullpen will improve from last year when it was just dreadful. I mean, the Giants really could have been up 8 runs, and I was still biting my nails watching that 9th inning because that's really how bad the bullpen was. So Mark Melancon was brought in. Nick Hundley, the longtime Colorado Rocky, was brought in to be a backup catcher to Buster Posey. Buster, of course, or not of course, Buster often plays first base because they don't want to overuse him behind the plate. I mean, by the way, on a side tangent, playing catcher is probably the hardest thing to do in all of sports. Yes, my bold statement of the day. I mean, I've tried going in that crouch. To do that for like 160 games in a season for 9 innings each, I mean, I can hardly do it for 2 innings, getting in that miserable, that miserable crouch and just standing there waiting for a ball to be hurled at me at like 90 plus miles per hour. So mad respect to catchers. So Nick Hundley, Buster Posey, and all catchers really in the entire MLB. Because, I mean, as I mentioned before, I can hardly play catcher for like 2 innings, and they can do it for 9 innings, 160 games in a year. So anyway, Nick Hundley was brought in to shore up that backup catcher spot. Jimmy Rollins, you may remember him from his days with the Philadelphia Phillies on that World Series winning 2009 team. He was brought in, signed to a minor league contract. He was kind of a big name. I'm not sure how much he'll actually contribute, but he was brought in. So, yeah, those are the new acquisitions. Melancon will try to shore up that bullpen. You've got Hunter Strickland, the boy Sergio Romo. Mama nación, mi nación, pide nación. Sergio Romo. You've got a few other prospects headlined by Ty Block. He pitched a few games last year. He'll probably start in the major leagues this year. And a bunch of minor leaguers, Blackburn, etc. So it'll be interesting to see how the prospects do this year. And the Giants really will need them because we're definitely going to need some prospects to step up to shore up that bullpen because we got Melancon, but still, if there's one thing that you really look at as a potential weakness on this San Francisco Giants team, it's that bullpen. So another interesting battle that the Giants are going to have to figure out in spring training is the battle for left field. Who is going to play left field? And the battle really comes down to 2 names, Jarrett Parker and Big Mac Williamson. His name's not Big Mac. We just call him Big Mac. I call him that lovingly. By the way, McDonald's sponsored this man. I want Mac Williamson to be sponsored by McDonald's and the Big Mac. So, back to what I was talking about. The battle between Jarrett Parker and Mac Williamson for that left field position. So Jarrett Parker has been a Giants minor league top prospect for a while. Maybe not their number one prospect in the organization, but he's definitely been up there for a while now. He is a lefty. He has pop. He's a decent fielder. He can hit to all places of the field, but he does not have as much power as Big Mac Williamson, who's a big burly right-hander who can hit for power. I believe Jarrett Parker is a more well-rounded player. I think his defense is better. He can do more. He can hit opposite way. He has power to not only right field but to left field, and he can contribute in more areas than Big Mac Williamson can. But I also think that the Giants should really platoon them, because it's always useful to have a righty that can go in when you have a tough left-hander on the mound. For example, Chris Sale or Clayton Kershaw. I mean, those guys really shut down left-handed hitting, so it would be nice to platoon the two and be able to use Big Mac here and there. Speaking of platoons, the Giants do have other utility infielders. For example, Kelby Tomlinson, he can play second, he can play shortstop, he can even play a little third. So he can give Brandon Crawford, Joe Panik, Eduardo Nunez time off when needed. And a prospect is something that the Giants would love to have, someone who steps up and puts together a solid season. At any infield, really at any position, because it would be nice to have another breakout star on this team. I think it would really push them over the threshold. So, with that in mind, let's look into the Woodruff Report crystal ball to see how the Giants will do this year. By the way, this is a super early prediction. I really shouldn't be making it, but I'm going to look into the Woodruff Report special crystal ball, and I am going to tell you listeners how the Giants will do this season. Remember, you heard it here first by me on Woodruff Report. I think the Giants will definitely qualify for the playoffs, whether that be winning their division, which is, I think, more likely. The Dodgers are a threat, but the Padres are rebuilding, the Diamondbacks are rebuilding, and the Rockies, they've made some good moves, but that pitching is still too much of a question mark for me to really look at them to challenge the Giants and Dodgers for the division. So the Giants will either make the playoffs as a division winner or as a wild card, and I think they will make it to the National League Championship Series and play the Cubs or another Nationals maybe. And I think that they will win the championship series and go on to win the World Series. Yay! Woo! Go Giants. I'm predicting the Giants to win the World Series this year. Yep. A very optimistic view from a huge Giants fan, but I pretty much always think the Giants are going to win the World Series, and this year is no different, especially with a lot of the acquisitions that the Giants have made. I think they have a very strong team. They can definitely win the NL West and beyond. So, that was your little Giants preview. And we're going to stay on the subject of Major League Baseball because I have a terrific idea, at least in my mind. What is your idea, Mr. Woodruff, you may be asking? Well, I'll tell you. My idea is introducing a relegation system to Major League Baseball. What is a relegation system? Why, thanks for asking. I will tell you. So, if you look in Europe, especially at soccer leagues such as the Premier League and Bundesliga, La Liga, what a relegation system is basically there is more than one division. I'll use England as my primary example. So in England, there is the Premier League, the English Championship, Football League 1, and Football League 2. All these have 20 or so teams in them. The Championship has like 24, and the Premier League has like 20. But all of these have a certain number of teams. So in the Premier League, the teams that finish, the bottom three teams, the teams that finished last, second to last, and third to last, get relegated. They go to the league below them. For example, if a team got relegated from the Premier League, they'd go down to the Championship. And they are replaced by the 3 teams that finished first, second, and third in the Championship. Why do I think this would translate well to the MLB? First of all, I think it would really give an incentive for teams not to tank. Right now, you really see teams who are just putting their young prospects out there and just kind of letting them find their own way because they're not going to win the World Series. I think this would really give an incentive for teams who may not be challenging for the World Series to still go out there and try their best because they don't want to get relegated to the second division. I also think this would bring more attendance to minor league games because, or I don't know, they'd probably have to change the league. Minor league, I guess, would work, but the minor league would really mean something now because the top 3 teams would progress up to Major League Baseball. So, besides the fact that I think teams would try harder because they don't want to get relegated, I think that this would really bring a homey, small town kind of effect to Major League Baseball. Because right now, a lot of the teams are situated in big cities, for example, like Atlanta, LA, New York. But a lot of these AAA teams are in smaller, homier towns. And I think that these towns could really rally around their major league team. Like you look at in England and you see that all these little towns support their local team, no matter if they're local teams in like Division 7 or if they're teams in Division 1. They still support their town team. And I think that this really gives a kind of close-knit community feeling to professional sports. And I think that this is something that would really translate well into baseball. So you have a small like AAA team in a smaller town, not a huge city, that for example, like the Rail Cats or something, the community can really rally around them. So that's my idea, introducing a relegation system to Major League Baseball. Now, the big glaring problem in this issue, in this potential idea that I am telling you, is that a lot of like the major league teams, their AAA affiliates are just their prospects, for example, and it would be kind of weird for a major league team to be competing against their prospects. That's why I believe that they should change the prospects system and basically give their prospects on loan to their affiliates. So instead of them being like owned by the St. Louis Cardinals, for example, the St. Louis Cardinals would loan out their second-round draft pick to their AAA affiliate. That way, you're not really competing against your own players. You're giving them on loan and letting them kind of find their own way. I think that this would be a really good idea because it would also give prospects a way to prove themselves. They could compete in AAA, and if their team wins, they'd be promoted to the MLB, and now they're in the show. And it would really help them develop, and I think you'd see more big-name players. And, I mean, I just think, I can't get over the fact that it'd be so cool to have a little team like win the World Series. Like if you look in England when Leicester City won the Premier League, I just thought that was so awesome. And I really wish something like that could happen in the US. Like imagine if a tiny team like the AA affiliate of the Miami Marlins ended up somehow winning the World Series on the back of like an incredible 3 prospects who just take the team to soaring levels. I think this would be so cool. So that's my big idea. Putting in a relegation system to Major League Baseball. It would give teams more incentive to winning and take away that tanking aspect of the game that fans often hate. It would give prospects the ability to prove themselves in the show. And it would give Major League Baseball a homey, small-town kind of vibe, which can contrast with the big city way that it sort of is right now. Don't get me wrong. Big city teams would probably win most of the World Series. But every now and again, you'll get that fairy tale run. For example, Leicester City in England. And I think that this would just be so interesting and beautiful to see in Major League Baseball. So my name's David Woodruff. You've been listening to the Woodruff Report. Thanks for tuning in. What did I do on this show? I gave you a Warriors update. I gave you a SF Giants preview, and I talked about introducing a relegation system to Major League Baseball. Please tune in next week as we'll have full Super Bowl post-game coverage. Again, I picked the Falcons to win that game when I looked into the Woodruff Report's crystal ball. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, David Woodruff. This is the Woodruff Report. See you next time. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you had fun too. Adios, amigos.